Hi, welcome back to Speak Up Afrika, a platform where we continuously bring you conversations that will inform, engage, and empower you. And the last couple of weeks, we've been talking tech, women in tech, what is the future of tech in African democracies? And all this can be made possible if we look at the policies and the guidelines that help us become safer even as we navigate this space. And with me today is a young gentleman that he's doing well. I have been in rooms where he's having conversations, and I am sure today will be nothing short of great. TJ, welcome to the podcast.
Asante. Thank you so much for that amazing introduction. As she said, my name is TJ Enos Ayiro, a legal practitioner, specifically in tech, innovation, and the law, looking at that intersection.
That's fantastic. And that's why we are having you here today.
Asante.
Tech is a space I'm looking to really dig into and navigate conversations in that sphere. And the truth is, with the technological innovations and the newness in it, we need policies and guidelines that can help people, especially in African democracies. And I love that you've done law and you speak in tech. So where we sit, do we have policies that guide? And if they're there, do they work?
Maybe I'll join those that often say policy and regulation often catch up to innovations. So this is from time immemorial. If you look at history, development of the press machine, industrial revolution, we've always had innovation, maybe putting a better foot forward in terms of progress in technological inventions. And often we find that policy catches up to that or regulation catches up to that. So I'd say, maybe to answer your question, we are trying. I'd say for Kenya, there's a desire, and this desire is seen through the conversations that we're having. We're not far behind when it comes to conversations around regulating even new emerging areas. For instance, AI, which is a buzzword. You'd go in every conversation, everyone's saying AI. But I've seen policymakers being deliberate to bring in ecosystem players and trying to have conversations around policy that would not stifle innovation, but rather provide a holistic environment where innovation can actually grow. So looking at Kenya specifically, I'd say there's such a championing of conversations around policy that is robust, but also enables innovation to progress. Maybe let me use this example. Recently, the Global Startup Ecosystem Index, we rose up 5 positions, now at 58 globally. Top 60 is a good feat, looking at the global index when it comes to startup ecosystem conversations. And this has partly been by deliberate actions by the likes of the Kenya National Innovation Agency, better known as Kenya, who have really tried to champion for such conversations around best policy practices for the ecosystem. So that's one example just to show you that we're not bad off. We are trying to provide a policy framework that would be able to harness the power of innovators.
That's well put. That's really well put. And interesting that you mentioned AI. I think nowadays every guest I have, every conversation, most rooms that I walk into, because I've even adopted the saying, AI is the new you and I. And we have exactly. We have the Data Protection Act that is there. With the coming of AI and now it being very common. Has it been encompassed in the act? Has there anything been stipulated in the law that is protecting people using AI?
That's an interesting thought. So the framers of the Data Protection Act, sometimes it's good to look at the spirit of the enactment of the legislation. The Data Protection Act, the 2019 version at least, is a consequence of the GDPR, the EU regulations around data protection. So its emergence is basically trying to codify or to harmonize what we already have from the EU. What you'd bear me witness is that the EU is quite progressive when it comes to regulations. So they usually put out regulations that try to maybe sort of give some guardrails when it comes to emergent areas. So the GDPR, we've been able to codify some of the principles that are there through the Data Protection Act of 2019. But I'd say Kenya has not been left behind, because we envisioned a place where data privacy would be something that we have even in conversation. And this is also seen in the Constitution of Kenya 2010. Article 31 provides for the right to data privacy, right? So we can already see from even legislation, from the Constitution underpinning, we already envision a place where data privacy takes center stage when you're talking about technological developments and even the use of data as we proceed. Now, going back to your question in relation to AI, I know it's an emerging area, and some would say it was a conversation even in the 90s. So for some, it's not necessarily new. It's just something that's become common because of generative AI and such conversations that are ongoing. I'd say the principles that are found within the DPA, the Data Protection Act, try to envision, even when it comes to emergent technologies, there are still those principles that guide. For instance, when it comes to the collection of data, we look at the lawful collection of that data. First and foremost, before you even go ahead and collect that data, are you following a lawful process in collecting that data? And once you proceed from that place of lawfully collecting the data, even what sort of data are you collecting? There's a principle of data minimization. For instance, I know some of you guys, umenda kwa, pardon me if I speak Swahili, mix it
it's
there.
allowed. It's allowed. Here we speak up.
So you've gone to a building. The guy is asking, anakuliza, give me your phone number, give me your ID. The guy is almost trying to check your birth certificate. You know, so you'd be thinking, what's all this data for? And I think part of the conversation that people should be guided in understanding, not all data is necessary for you. So data minimization is one of the principles also enshrined within the DPA, so that you collect what is necessary, right? So I'm just mentioning these principles to paint a picture that even in as much as we're having conversations around AI, some of these principles envision such emergent technologies. So I wouldn't say we are caught off guard, but we're really trying. From the principles that are already set out, some envision the progressive emergent technologies. But let me throw a spanner into the works. When we consider these large language models, the likes of ChatGPT, or the one that Bing uses, and all other models that have been generated, there's the issue of how that data is collected, some data biases when it comes to these large language models. And you've had something like, maybe for Africa, the data that has been collected by these LLMs could be biased. Maybe, for instance, you're using an image generation AI sort of LLM, and you tell it to generate for you a CEO, a rich CEO, whatever, in mid-40s, maybe it would give you a white man with blonde hair, with blue eyes. And you'd be trying to think, what's this about? I mean, an African context. So some of the things that we're trying to cure is that data is also holistic enough to capture other regions, and that there's no centrality or that focus in a specific region when it comes to the collection of data, when it comes to even such generative models. Still to that point, I think also when it comes to AI, there's the issue of leakages. So trying to also curb that when we have these large language models and the people who are handling that data, making sure they also adhere to the principles of data collection. So those are some of the examples that we're thinking around, even as AI progresses. How can we best make sure that it adheres to the principles of collection of data? Even as a data subject, I have rights that accrue to me. For instance, I have the right to access this data, right? The right also to deletion of the data. If I say, listen, I gave my data, I consented to giving my data, but I also have the right for deletion of that data or correction of that data. So it's good that we're having this conversation, so that even people, as they think around AI, iterating around AI, those principles are also captured in practice.
Yeah. You know, I was just waiting for you to finish and me to say this. Interesting how I've had a conversation here on this podcast on how much is too much information. And if you've not watched that episode, go watch it. So TJ, my guest was saying exactly the same thing. Why would you get into a networking event and someone wants your name? where you live, your email address.
Right.
I mean, it's just why are we giving out all this information? You know, you're walking into a building. And so we were saying, so at what point do we say, no, I am not feeling comfortable to give out all this information? But again, on the other side, they are claiming to, not claiming, but they are collecting data to protect themselves. So let's digress a bit and talk about how much is too much information by law na kwa ground.
That's a very good question.
Yes.
Because as you've rightly put it, you'd enter some areas and you're feeling like, hey, these guys are taking so much information.
Yeah.
Going back to the principles of data collection, there's that aspect of purpose of collection, right? So the purpose should be limited for that specific purpose. So for instance, a networking event. So the data collected should be within the confines of that event networking session. And that should be put as concise and as cogent as possible for you to understand that my data is being collected for this purpose. And over and above that, that would be an illegality. So how much is too much information? So anyone who's a data controller, and the Data Protection Act takes time to just break down the various persons involved in the data collection. So the data controller is a person who describes or gives direction in terms of what data is to be collected, what for, and why is that data being collected. So the data controller should be keen enough to make sure that the data subject, the person whose data is being taken, that their data is minimized and the specific purpose is clearly identified so that the data subject is cognizant that this is the reason as to which my data is being collected. So I say that yo kizungu mkuti mingi just to say purpose should be specific. And even the amount of data taken should be minimized to what is needed. So for instance, if it's an event, I think like name a personal identifier, like maybe your number because an SMS was sent to you or the ticket, and then it should be limited only for that specific purpose.
Yeah.
Something that would identify you even for you to get access to the event, right?
Yeah.
So I think one thing that's really a headache for us is awareness and culture.
That's true.
You'd find a security guard, and I love those guys. But sometimes when you ask them, why are you collecting my data? Nafuata masharti. Like sometimes they're not aware of as to why they're collecting data. So I think such conversations should be had. A culture of awareness, sensitization, so that people understand this is the reason and this is the data I should collect, and merge those together and, follow the principles that are espoused in the DPA.
Let's take a minute there. I want to do a reflection. A while back, maybe 2019, peak of COVID, when now people were hanging out, maybe you would do more home visits than anything. I remember one time we walked into this building and my friend literally just gave all wrong details. I think the only right thing was just the name.
Right.
But from the number to the ID to everything, it was just wrong.
Yeah.
So when we drove past the security check, I was like, okay, wait, what just happened? And she was like, why would I give them my right information? I think politicians come and get our information from that point. But then they started having issues of crime and whatnot in those apartments. And I said, so if something happened and you gave the wrong information and maybe CCTV footage is pulled and you're there, but when we look at the data, you're not there, So we went back to the drawing board and we were like, you know what? I think it's safer to just give the right information, because imagine what happens then, because now you've given the wrong information because you're like, hey, these guys, they're too much on our necks with our data. But something happens and the information you gave was not accurate. And I bring this to tie to the thought that you said you have the right to deletion of even information that you give.
Yes.
But we are struggling with sensitization and awareness.
Right.
So what happens if I go to a social place or even a formal place And I feel like as an individual with the exposure that I've had, thankfully for conversations like this that you're having today, that I don't think this is necessary, you know?
Yeah.
Or maybe later on, I realized there was a breach and my information has been given out. As Monanchi, what should I do?
I love that question.
Yeah.
Because many people are wary of giving their data because of such instances that you've mentioned. Come election cycle, you're being texted, vote for, and you're wondering, hey, mwesh, ulipata wapi namba yangu? Yeah. And I think such instances, even around scams, trying to swim swaps, people are wary sometimes because of enforcement, which may seem like it's not really functioning. So the lack of enforcement sometimes may make people be wary of sharing the information. Or even sometimes you're trying to track where did the breach happen because you've given your information maybe in different places that you've gone to. So you might be hesitant to share information about yourself.
That's true.
But at the same time, it's also good that you've mentioned that what's my reprieve? What remedy do I have? My data has been collected. What should I do? My data has been breached. Some person has gotten my information. I don't know where that happened. So I love the institutional framework that we have. So by courtesy of the DPA, the Data Protection Act, we have an office established. And you could be cognizant of this office, the ODPC, the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner. And part of the role that institution has been charged with is making sure enforcement is put in place where data breaches occur. And this same office has the capability of even giving penalties. Let me use an example of maybe data image rights. For instance, and this happened to a friend of mine. He got admitted to the bar and he sees himself on a poster for a university that he never, and they're advertising for a law program. So my friend is like, wait up, you guys are advertising, I'm seeing this. And he went ahead to just trying to enforce his image rights, right? Because that's belongs to him and he should have the consent to even give when it comes to using of such information. So what I've seen is that some institutions that have breached data principles or what is envisioned within the laws that we have been slapped with some huge fines. So there's some enforcement going on. Allow me say this. Our framework is not as mature as Europe, maybe by virtue of Europe started long ago in terms of putting these mechanisms in place. But I'd laud the efforts that the ODPC is taking in trying to enforce the data privacy rights that we have as individuals. So there's, if you can just visit the site, sometimes they even give an opportunity for you to give a complaint or just to share that something has happened in relation to your data has been breached. So it's important to be aware of such channels that are available to you. So if your data has been breached, try looking for a complaint section within the ODPC website. I bet you'll find something there. Just to give a heads up, listen, data has been breached and I'm looking for enforcement, right? Maybe the other alternative is also to look for guys like a privacy lawyer. This is not bigging myself up, but I mean, it's good for you to have someone who can guide you through the process of, my data has been breached. I need to understand the enforcement mechanisms that I can start off or something that I can begin in terms of trying to enforce my data privacy rights. So just a clarion call for guys to just be aware of the channels that you can use and also the people who can help you to enforce your data privacy rights.
Great. A few things you've brought out early in the conversation. You recognize that we are not yet there. But Kenya, even as an African democracy, we are a few steps ahead. Right. So how effective is our Data Protection Act in comparison to global standards like GDPR and all that? In your own opinion, where we sit now, how effective is our policy?
Okay. Truly, we're not yet there. And I think there's always room for growth, right? I'd say we have substantive alignment to the principles that have been set out that are globally accepted. And I started out by trying to mention some of those principles.
Yes.
Lawful access to data, to information, and then even how you process that data. Those principles, we have some general substantive alignment to the global standard principles when it comes to collection of data. And I'd also say, by virtue of us having an institution that tries to safeguard data privacy conversations, that's also a commendable aspect. I'd say the Kenyan jurisdiction has really appreciated. Aside from that, I'd say some of the gaps that we see, those gaps are occasioned by we are trying to form precedents. For instance, if you're to go to a court of law, there are certain judicial decisions that have already been made, but we need to continue to mature the body of law that surrounds how we interpret those laws, how we interpret what the DPA says concerning what is a breach, etc. So at the moment, we have some body of law that is developing, but it's not bad. We also borrow some common law precedents or decisions from other countries that are relevant to that specific DPA or jurisdictions that have a well-developed, mature framework that comes to data protection. So it's a learning curve that my thinking would develop as we continue to work the law. And it happens for many jurisdictions. When 2019 is fairly new, 6 years in, depending from where you see it.
Yeah.
But we've had successive conversations around how to interpret the same, and also judicial decisions that have been decided by judges in relation to interpretation of the law. So apart from those gaps, I think once we mature in that, we'll be best placed to continue even leading the conversation in Africa. I'd say in Africa, we're at least somewhere. Yeah.
That's good. I mean, anywhere I sit and people have positive things to say, especially about our country.
Right.
And you know the season that you're in right now.
Yeah.
You take a moment and sink into that, because so much is happening. And I want to pull the conversation towards the side of ethics.
Okay.
I am glad you brought out the example where your friend, their image was taken up and someone is just doing adverts.
Yeah.
And the technological innovation, right now, everyone is media personalities,
That's
content creators. You're minding your business on the streets. Someone is all over your business, or something has happened. Right now, everyone is a journalist. With a click of the camera, people are covering stories anyhow, anywhere, And again, we've said the electioneering period is coming. Your data is always there. We've had scenarios where leaders literally buy off from vendors, I wanted to say, like M-Pesa and everything. And your information is out there, buildings. So how do we sensitize, and what do we do, TJ, to make sure that our leaders and even individuals in our country remain ethically upright as we do and engage in technological innovations and data especially?
The ethical conversation is a good one. When it comes to, sometimes we have character flaws, we have people within our society who would like to take advantage of others. I mean, that's commonplace for also other places where people are keen on taking advantage where they see loopholes. That's more of a value system conversation. Sometimes we are quick to legislate as opposed to trying and building integrity from within. So this has been faulted for many African jurisdictions, where we try to legislate ethics, we try to legislate. It's not bad, but we try to legislate everything. The challenge is with that you have a body of legislation, and then people stay in court for a long time. But some of these issues, I feel, are more on a value system basis. So I'd say even championing for conversations around integrity, these values that are critical for leadership. And the Constitution, Chapter 6 is a very big chapter of the Constitution that tries to instill certain leadership values. But still, in as much as it is codified in law, sometimes we don't see these values of leadership espoused. So it's rather unfortunate, I'd say so. But having these conversations, I mean, we'll never stop. It's something, will sound like broken records, but please, let's keep at putting our leaders on toes in terms of civic engagement, and also championing for them to better respect rights of individuals, respect each other's rights. It's something that we have to keep at it.
Yeah.
But as much as I've said that, I think enforcement through the ODPC, we should still have some even stringent measures in comes to enforcement, because this would see that this ODPC is not a toothless bulldog, as people may say in certain legal quarters, but it barks and bites. So as much as it's barking, it has teeth and it can bite. So enforcement should also be critical in this conversation, so that also we have people adhering to what we have in terms of law.
Yeah.
But the ethics conversation, I mean, we've been talking around matters of ethics. We have a whole commission, Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. We have bodies that are charged to try and instill such values, but sometimes it's on a personal basis. Maybe people should either seek divine intervention. But yeah, I just wanted to put that out. But enforcement would be a key pillar as a deterrent. Yeah.
I laugh so hard because
yeah,
our leader, who is our 01, likes to bring the element of spirituality and wachia Mungu afanye kazi yake. But I believe at some level you need to not take matters into our own hands, but we need to act and make people accountable. TJ, right now, and again with like AI, there are tools that are being used to generate what we can call templates.
Okay.
And some of these templates, organizations are just adapting and absorbing and using them as a blanket way of doing things, not knowing that some of these templates should be used and tailored around specific organizations, institutions for their needs.
Exactly.
So what are some of the challenges from where you sit that especially organizations face while complying with data privacy and the law?
That's a fantastic question. I've seen, looking at the startup ecosystem for innovators, the question around compliance and growth, usually people feel like it's a road that splits. Nikama, I can't have both. But I'd say when it comes to compliance, even from the onset, not looking at compliance as a burden, but looking at compliance as something that would be beneficial for you and also for the people that you help. Because once you start collecting personal identifiable information or data from people, there's an obligation that comes to you as the person who's controlling that data. You owe the society, you owe the people whom you've collected data from a responsibility of storing that data well and using that data for the specific purpose. So owing to that obligation that you owe, then compliance should also almost comes as a responsibility. I'm tempted to say as a corporate social responsibility, as a responsibility that you owe to your customers, as a responsibility to the people that are around you, that data is kept well. And this goes to every other compliance conversation. Because when you think about compliance is just to ensure that standards are kept in a place where the customers, or from a customer-centric position, customers are placed in a pedestal of sorts, where the customer is protected and not the big tech or the big companies using that information as a tool or to oppress.
For sure.
So the main idea, or even the philosophical underpinning of compliance, is to safeguard the citizenry. So from that perspective, I think when it comes to startups or companies, compliance should be had hand in hand with iterative steps or inventive steps that people are taking. Just try and get a hold of people who are skilled, do a data protection impact assessment, try and understand the risks that your data protection may have around the subjects from which you're collecting the data from. So when you put such measures in place, it even makes compliance easy. Looking at compliance even from the onset, not as a burden, but something that will help you even to help others. You're taking a responsibility of somebody offering a service or a good to better assist the society. I think when you have such a mindset, it even propels you to much growth, because people trust you. They're like, this guy handles my data well. This person or this company is really invested in also my well-being. So I think for corporate, they should look at it from that perspective. And I think maybe the balance around people who are starting out or SMEs, there's data that shows SMEs are not really keen to adhere to certain data protection. They see it as a tag along. I'm just going to check a list. Data protection, I have a data privacy policy. But when you look at it as working hand in hand, it better places you even to be of great use to the people who are around you. And people trust you better. It enforces or builds some sort of brand trust around what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah. And I like how you've really expounded on that. And with, again, AI, fintech, technology, and law, what are some of the concerns we should be aware of, TJ? I mean, we've mentioned some in passing in our conversation today, but I just want us to take a minute there and look at what are some of the concerns that we should really be aware of. Because, I mean, to whom much is given, much is expected.
Absolutely.
And right now, this is a generation that is woke. You know, we are very up there. You know, the world is our oyster. The world has become a global village. But I mean, there are some repercussions. There are some hidden things in the eyes of the law and even in the eyes of data. What are some of the concerns we should be aware of? Yeah.
One I'd say is cybersecurity issues. We've had an increase, and it continues to increase, the number of threats towards even institutions that are data controllers.
Right.
So they have, on average, I was privy to a certain conversation around banking institutions, and they say the number of cyber threat infiltrations attempts they get on an average is really alarming. So it goes to show you that even as tech, we have these technological, disruptive technologies coming up. We also have, on the flip side, people who are also hacking, people who are coming up with malwares, ransomwares, and all manner of technological inventions trying to infiltrate or trying to take out information or data from these well-established institutions. So that's one threat that is apparent. It's something that we can't run away from. It's rather a question of what sort of encryption technologies are also put in place by the companies. And many experts have also been given an opportunity to assist such institutions to come up with encryption technologies and also firewalls that enable some form of protection from such cyber threats. So we're in an era where anyone can access, someone can code, can get AI to help even in the coding process of a malware, and people are infiltrating systems. So we also need people to rise up and also become white hackers, ethical hackers, people who show the loopholes within the systems to try and help also people to avoid certain mistakes that are made in development of software, etc. So that's one common threat that I've seen. And in as much as law would like to respond to that, sometimes it's hard to enforce. When someone is in Russia, for instance, someone is hacking from Russia or from Ukraine or from whichever country. So it would become hard to even try and enforce. How do you enforce the Computer Misuse and Cyber Crimes Act? So
I mean, it can be quite a lot.
Yeah. So I'm looking at that as one of the threats that we have, and I'd like to emphasize this in terms of awareness, sensitization, capacity building. Trainings are critical, and it's good to find institutions that offer training in terms of how you handle data. So those institutions will show you the places of risk and how best you can collect data and also how to protect that data. So trainings, we offer trainings. There are lawyers who offer trainings. There are institutions that offer trainings. Looking at DPOs, data protection officer, getting such resources would be quite critical in you avoiding such challenges. So maybe aside from that, the issue of enforcement, which we've mentioned, that's a risk. We have a robust legal system, but enforcement is an issue sometimes. So those are the sort of risks that we have, just to mention a few.
Yeah. And I think as we just come to the tail end of our conversation, the truth is, even before we go to institutions and organizations, we start with individuals.
Starts with me.
And there's a gentleman who was in our podcast and said to us that the user is always the weakest link.
Mm-hmm.
And I attended a conference where our speaker was telling us, I mean, why ChatGPT is not your bestie?
Yeah.
And especially most of us who are using the free versions of it, you're there giving it all your information.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's my boss, it's my spouse, it's my this, you're giving it all your data. And even youngings who are in comms or whichever capacity, and you use that ChatGPT to, you know, like get feedback or do your work.
Right.
And they were saying there's a way someone can manipulate the system to reverse and get all the information that you're giving it.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted us to now talk to individuals on how can we start by being safe ourselves.
Yes.
As we now go and expect institutions to keep our data safe and protect us as we wind up.
Fantastic. We say in law, ignorance is not a defense. Usually we use that for maybe criminal matters, etc. But I'd still extrapolate that same principle to say, you not knowing what rights accrue to you is not a defense. Like, we have to be proactive enough to know what rights that we have and how best I can protect my rights. So I'd echo what that gentleman said. Sometimes we are the weakest link, in the sense that maybe we are not equipped enough. Maybe you've not come to such a podcast, and that's why you should subscribe. I mean, this is a sensitizing platform where you get information that would be important for you to know how to protect yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So my clarion call is try and grab as much information as you can, and use that information for your benefit. Be a practitioner of that information. It's not just good to have head knowledge, but put it into practice. Like, once you know you come across a body of knowledge, for instance, how to protect your information online, be a practitioner of that information. So I think that would be the first step, building up your knowledge base and actually being a practitioner of what you've learned.
Okay. Yeah. That's fantastic. And I mean, these conversations can keep going on and on in different quarters, podcasts, networking events. And that's why we're here to continuously bring you conversations. And this is the time where I want to do a drum roll and say, TJ, plug yourself. I mean, we would make such fantastic use of your knowledge and expertise. So how do we get a hold of you? How do you help us understand law and protection in this space? And I want you to plug yourself with my audience, because I would want them to be 10 steps ahead of other people. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Wendy, even for the opportunity. To you who's listening, my name is TJ Enos Ayiro. I'm an innovator, a legal practitioner, and sometimes I call myself the creatives lawyer. So if you're looking for someone to help you learn the ropes, even as you're starting out, feel free to reach out. I'm on LinkedIn, on Instagram as well. DM, hit the message button on LinkedIn. I'll be quick to respond, just to get to know where you're at on your enterprise and how to better assist you to move to the next level. Asante.
That's fantastic. And today's episode has been short, powerful, and very, very sweet. I mean, I keep on saying that here at Speak Up Afrika, we bring you conversations that will inform, engage, and empower you. Because once you are equipped with tools of strength and empowerment, you cannot be easily dispensable. And I want to appreciate you for tuning in today and listening to our conversation with TJ. I will love you and leave you today. My name is Wendy Loyce, your host at Speak Up Afrika. I will see you on our next episode.